I do think that several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy, because that is a part of what happened here. And we're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
Oh, who's ready to have those forced media literacy classes? Who's ready to be told what's true and what isn't? I want to know. I want to know what's real. I want Mommy AOC to tell me what's what. I want her and her deep state goons to let me know what the truth is. Because I've been a very bad boy and I haven't been trusting the experts. I've been thinking for myself. I've been naughty and I need to be punished. But anyways, if Kamala wins, there will be a serious crackdown on the means of communication. I expect that Elon will probably be arrested and that Twitter will be taken from his management. Because Twitter is really like a Wild West right now. You can say things on Twitter. People will still complain that they get, their posts are getting censored, but still, you can say things on Twitter right now that you can't say on any other major social media platform. And obviously, the DOJ, the State Department, the powers that be, have a serious problem with that. They can't just let that stand. But they're going to have an even bigger problem on their hands if Donald J. Trump gets elected to office in November. Right? This is why they've sent 2 people after him. I know there was someone saying, in one of my comment sections, blah, he was saying, oh, well, I don't really believe the whole conspiracy thing. But, dude, you really believe some 20-year-old had no social media footprint? Like, come on. There are very interested parties who do not want to see Donald Trump elected again. That's very clear. We're not even out of the woods if he gets elected, but there will not be a second chance if he doesn't win in November, if they either off him first or they cheat enough that he loses to Kamala, both of which are distinct possibilities. But we've basically reached a point in this country where things have become so mismanaged. I mean, I'm reminded of this one article that was like, in California, where is the GOP when you need them? They aren't doing anything. It's like, dude, Democrats control the government. This is a ridiculous statement. They can't pass the buck to someone else. Their policies obviously don't work. They're deeply anti-American. They're harmful to the average person. But they can't blame anyone else because they're the ones in power. And I'm reminded of this commentary that a CNN anchor made, surprisingly, after the Trump-Harris debate, which is that basically Obama's been in power for 8 years. Trump was in power for 4 years. Biden was in power for another 4. It's really hard to argue that the state of this country is because of Trump. Like, the Democrats really have no standing there. And their only intention is going to be making things worse if they gain power again. So what they've got to do is gain control of the means of communication, have some sort of centralized authority to decide what's misinformation and what isn't, and then prosecute people on that basis. So they'll decide that a story isn't true if it actually, if it's exposing how this country's being mismanaged, and then they'll just ban it, right? You'll get a couple years in prison or something like that for spreading misinformation, which is no longer covered under the First Amendment. That's their plan for this country.
He has lost his privileges, and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation, and that has to stop.
Now ask yourself, who will be doing this oversight and who will be doing this regulation? The state. Clearly. This will... we have ostensibly in this country, we have a free market of ideas. But the thumb is obviously on the scale, right? There are some things that you and I know that you can't say, or you'll be fired from your job for saying them. There are some discussions we're not allowed to have. And the Harris campaign wants to formalize the oversight of so-called fact-checkers like Snopes. That's really what's going on here. And if this already wasn't sounding dystopian enough to you, this sentiment has been echoed by Democrats and the left generally this election cycle.
We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
Dude, if Kamala wins, I could catch a charge because of Hill Dog. Isn't that crazy? Really? There are Americans engaged in this. Dude, Americans, as in everyday average civilians who have the wrong opinion and any kind of platform. That could include me, bro. Like, seriously, think about how insane this is. On the one hand, it's a little daunting, a little scary for that life change. Don't want to go to prison. But then on the other, I'm a little, I'm kind of happy that I could be ruled a dissident, an enemy of the state, just for saying the things I say. There's a feather in my cap. What are other people doing? I'm important. They had to play whack-a-mole with me. Clearly, I'm a somebody, unlike the rest of you normies. And I know how to make a shank out of a toothbrush, okay? I can handle prison. Okay, but seriously, all jokes aside, how often has the narrative changed? How many times has there been a situation, an event, like the schmandemic, that's come up, and they were saying one thing, we were saying another, we were told that we were crazy and spreading disinfo and harming people for saying what we were saying, and then suddenly it came out that we were right. Like, how many times has that happened? The Harris campaign wants the ability to send us to jail for questioning the narrative of the MSM. This is deadly serious. And there's other things too. Like, I had this video planned for the situation that's happening not only in Boulder, Colorado, but also apparently in Chicago as well, where these Venezuelan immigrants are apparently taking over these apartment blocks. And in Chicago, they're like, they're up against the Chicago gangs there. Kind of a funny situation. But that was denied, at least in Colorado, initially by the Boulder PD, from what I understand. So, would talking about this issue then also be considered disinformation, subject to governmental, bureaucratic oversight and fact-checking and punishable by law if determined not to be true? Because are these fact-checkers given power by the state? What are they going to determine? Are they going to side between video evidence or what Boulder PD has said? The choice is obvious. We all know what choices they're going to make. But then this state-imposed information blackout will serve an important purpose, so that there are large pockets of people who will be temporarily pacified because they won't be allowed to know through official channels how bad things are actually getting. There won't be MSM outlets talking about this situation. It'll be as though it doesn't exist.
all of these social media companies and these online platforms, which are so powerful in their ability to impact perception about an issue and to influence behaviors. Let's be clear about that. There have to be standards, and he and his account should be taken down. We saw in El Paso that shooter in his manifesto was informed by how Donald Trump uses that platform. And this is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site. It is a matter of safety and corporate accountability.
Thank you. Senator Warren, you can respond.
So, look, I don't just want to push Donald Trump off Twitter. I want to push him out of the White House. That's our job.
Join me in saying that his Twitter account should be shut down.
No, let's figure out why it is that
he has lost his privileges and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop. Donald Trump has 65 million followers on Twitter. And we have to take seriously the weaponization of this platform by the president and the need, therefore, of a private corporation to be held accountable to say he has abused the terms, and it could result literally in a threat to safety of human beings who are participating with the process of justice.
There is not a part of you civically, constitutionally, that is concerned about the precedent of a private company taking the platform away from the President of the United States or some other elected official.
Free speech does not condone or protect threats to the safety of other human beings. And so that is what we are talking about. Like, let's be really clear about what we're talking about.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Yeah, there we go. Nice big compilation of why they want to take your platform away from you and destroy what little we do have of a public forum in this country. And I mean, maybe this will be held off if Kamala wins, this absolute destruction of the First Amendment. Maybe it will be stalled by the composition of the Supreme Court for another 4 to 8 years. But believe me, they're working tirelessly. And they already have, aside from Sotomayor, they have Ketanji Brown Jackson. You know, how bad can it get?
Justice Jackson?
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways in the most important time periods. I mean, what would you have the government do? I've heard you say a couple times that the government can post its own speech, but in my hypothetical, kids, this is not safe, don't do it, is not going to get it done. And so I guess some might say that the government actually has a duty to take steps to protect the citizens of this country, and you seem to be suggesting that that duty cannot manifest itself in the government encouraging or even pressuring platforms to take down harmful information. So can you help me? Because I'm really worried about that, because you've got the First Amendment operating in an environment of threatening circumstances from the government's perspective, and you're saying that the government can't interact with the source of those problems.
And Your Honor, I understand that instinct, and I guess what I tell you is
it is so insane to hear a Supreme Court justice talk about she's concerned about what's being posted on platforms, and that the First Amendment is hamstringing the government from handling what's on these platforms. Like, that is wild. That is wild to me. That is completely crazy. And there you go. In her whole spiel, there's more of the nanny state safetyism at work, trying to bubble wrap America, justifying the censorship by saying, some would say the state has a duty, the government has a duty to protect its citizens from misinformation. And this is really going to be used as a cloak, as a pretext, as a justification for them censoring the truth. That's what's going on here, and that's what's in store for us if Donald Trump is not elected. Dark days ahead. Dark days ahead, to say the least. I really am not happy about this DEI hire judge and this DEI hire presidential candidate. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it if you really liked it. That is the #1 way you can help me grow this channel. Please be a bro. In these dark times, in these dark and turbulent times, I need your help. So share this video somewhere where other people will see it. And Red Channels will catch you in the next one.